Welcome to another edition of the Sports Lunatics. Who are the Sports Lunatics? Well, we're just two regular guys who love sports history. Hi, I'm Shawn, Lavigne in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
And on this edition of the Sports Lunatics, the breaking news today. This one's a tough one. And I know there will be some listeners and viewers wondering why we're even doing this type of show. But it's what we do. And we've had to talk about other subject matter that has not been pleasant. But O.J. Simpson, Pro Football Hall of Famer, passed away at 76. Easily one of the most polarizing figures in our lifetime. Um, and that's I don't even know what else to say after that, Howie. Just your reaction to the news this morning.
Surprise, I didn't know he had cancer. Cancer is what took his life. And I saw there's a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter right now, and I don't even know how to respond to that either. Because I mean, as you can guess, it's pretty mixed. Certainly up to a certain date, June 17th, 1994, O.J. Simpson was a hero. He was a guy who was looked up to by so many. He was an ex-football player. He was a football commentator. He was a commercial pitchman. He was so many different things, and he was living the golden life until that one week or one day or however you want to say it, where Nicole Simpson was stabbed to death. Ron Goldman, he was stabbed to death. And O.J. Simpson was de facto the guy who did it. And I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that. After that, he became a pariah instantly to a lot of people. I shouldn't say to everybody, but to a lot of people, he became a pariah.
Well, I will
And
say June of 1994, when the murders happened, that's where my head automatically went. I hope the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman find peace today. That you know, a little bit of peace and comfort today. Uh, Many people directed their comments on social media to that very fact, and they sadly, over time, they have been forgotten victims. Um, while OJ was still living and still, you know, uh, being a celebrity. That's what it was about. It wasn't like he just went away either. He ultimately he was in prison for other offenses. Um, which is a whole other story in itself. And I posted today, and I will say this: when I posted on our group page, Adam Schefter's post from ESPN that O.J. Simpson had passed, I was like, how do I write this? So I just mentioned, I said, to get a real good perspective on his career, and as you said, he was a hero and then went to a piranha after the murders in June of 1994. OJ Made in America, the 30 for 30 special that ESPN aired, it won multiple awards. It was fascinating to watch the series. I believe it was 5 parts. Documented everything. What you just said about him as a football player, broadcaster, pitchman, and then the murders, the trial, and sort of what happened after. It's fascinating. It was done in, I think, 2016, 2017. And look, we're only a couple of months away from the 30th anniversary of that event. And it changed. It changed so many things. Number one, it changed the culture in America. it changed media around the world. You know, that's what I sort of went to. I was actually I was just starting at the Fan 590 in that time period, and I was actually on the board for the verdict when we broke it live to do the trial verdict, and then the aftermath of that, what happened, and then there was the civil lawsuits. I was on the board for that when we broke it live for what happened there. Like it's that's been a part of my journalistic career, was following that story. And today, you know, 30 years later, it just came all flooding back. I was, you know, I remember driving in the car during the chase because I was heading back home from Toronto to Ottawa. And here, and my wife got mad at me. She's like, "Why are we listening to this?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want to miss what's going to happen next." Because we didn't know what was happening. It was on radio. It was, you know, us radio guys, theater of the mind. That's what I was thinking. And just the dramatics of it. Then that other documentary, we literally had just talked about this a couple of days ago, June 17th, 1994, where one of the most insane days in sports history. There was so much going on in the world, but then it gets dominated by O.J. Simpson's Bronco chase and how it affected media and how it affected how we covered events and just how it infiltrated sports. And it was insane. So that's sort of where I went right off the bat when I heard the news today, Howie.
When the anniversary comes up, we're going to be doing another show on that day. But I mean, it was a crazy day. You're absolutely right. You had game 5 of the NBA championship going on that night and basically being preempted throughout the game because of reports of the police chasing O.J. Simpson. That day, you also had the Rangers, the New York Rangers, celebrating their Stanley Cup victory with a parade down the Canyon of Heroes. You had Arnold Palmer in his very final day at the U.S. Open. You had, now you're gonna have to come in here, Shawnee, because my mind is going on me. But also that day, you had the World Cup starting, the World Cup of Soccer starting in the United States in Chicago that day. And what was the other? There was a 6th event. Oh, it was Ken Griffey Jr. chasing 30 home runs. He was going to be the fastest player ever to get to 30 home runs. Imagine 30 home runs by June 17th. But anyway, and that was probably the last in terms of importance that day because of everything that was going on in Los Angeles. And it became so crazy and so frenzied. Up in the air, helicopters of all the different networks flying around, their signals getting crossed. CBS signals being put on NBC, ABC signals being put on CBS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was crazy time. But as you said, Shawn, what that day did to media and what it focused on and what it showed us was that we as a society were more interested in watching a star football player and a star broadcaster and a guy who was in movies and commercials being chased down by police than we were interested in watching game 5 of the NBA championship or whatever else was going on that night. It ushered in the era of reality television, whether for good or for bad. Personally, I think it's for bad, but I mean, that's what it did. That whole day, June 17th, 1994, gave us Court TV. It gave us all of the reality TV that we see now on our televisions, or that some people, I don't watch them, but some people watch them. All of that stuff came in because of that day in June in 1994.
It changed the landscape all across the board. Even in sports, it changed the landscape. It changed everything. You know, that's when you started having the talking heads come in, giving their opinions, the so-called experts, and 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 we had that wall-to-wall coverage for months of the trial. And look, CNN was really the first to break into news live event coverage, which was fascinating. but then it just got nauseating to the point of where we're like today. It's crazy what we see on our television sets. There used to be Entertainment Tonight.
Yeah.
Now all these entertainment shows started popping up, and it was all about the celebrity and chasing the celebrity. You had local news coverage breaking into car chases all the time and doing these live events. Like it just ramped it up to no end. And it really was. It changed the landscape of media. And I agree with you, Howie. I think it's been for the worse. And that's not just two guys who are our ages. I've seen it. I've lived it. Um, you know, I've been told what we should be doing to attract, you know, uh, listeners or viewers or what have you. And I'm like, can we just not broadcast the news? Can we not just, you know, here's what's happening? Just broadcast the news. Why do we always have to have an opinion? Um, why can't we just have a conversation? That's where I always go with this. But supposedly that nobody cares about any having a conversation anymore. It's got to be a fight. But I don't want to get off a tangent. But yeah, it was a fascinating time to live in. Um, and look, we all got caught up in it, Howie. We all got caught up in it because we couldn't believe it.
Right.
We could not believe that O.J. Simpson, who we just saw on our television set, the season before on the sidelines or in the broadcast booth, would even be capable of that. He was the Hertz guy. Like, I'm not making a joke. It was like he was on our TVs all the time and was a successful pitch man, and everybody loved the juice.
I'm 9 years older than you are, Shawn, and I can remember watching USC and Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. O.J. Simpson, the star of the game, the star of college football at the time. 1968, he got the Heisman Trophy. He played halfback for the Buffalo Bills. I think he was the first guy to run for 2,000 yards in a season, right?
2003.
There you go. I can remember I had a paper route at the time. I delivered the Ottawa Journal. May it rest in peace. But I can remember coming home with a copy of the paper and O.J. Simpson, his back with the name Simpson across it, after having just completed that record, 2,003 yards. And I believe that was a 14-game season too, if
It
I'm not
was.
mistaken.
It was. Yeah.
1970, he was voted College Football Player of the Year by ABC Sports. He was the Pro Bowl guy. He made the Pro Bowl every year from 1972 to 76. He was in his first movie, 1974, The Towering Inferno. And if you don't like The Towering Inferno, go watch SCTV's version of it because it's hilarious. It's awesome. But anyway, the weirdest thing was to see him in a San Francisco 49ers jersey after playing for the Bills for 8 years or 9 years. But he did. He became a commentator immediately after his football career was done with ABC Sports, then went over to Monday Night Football. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. He was in Police Squad and Police, The Naked Gun, the movies, all those. He was everybody. He was everyone to everybody. And he was, as we said, he was beloved up until that date in 1994.
And then it got really weird.
Oh,
It did. It just got really weird. It was awful.
it became a cartoon.
He became a cartoon, and then, making the claims that he will find the killers. And of course, that never happened. Then trying to write a book called If I Did It. Like, there was a lot of bizarre stuff going on, and he became sort of a parody of himself. But it wasn't funny. Nobody found it funny. Dan Patrick, who I love, I had a chance to interview him after the murders, and it was just a really bizarre encounter. Like, he you could tell he was still shaking every time he talked about it. Like, it was just bizarre. just the behavior of OJ Simpson. And, you know, and then when he tweets out, that's the part that drives me nuts sometimes. It's like when OJ used to tweet out about an event, it was like you had to hear it. It wasn't
Well,
anything. There was no substance behind it, but it was OJ Simpson. Um, you know, but on the flip side, when that verdict went down, you know, there were racial lines, right? There were
yes.
racial lines. There were, you know, black people, you know, were celebrating, and white people were very pissed off. And it was a very tense time too. We had just gone through the Rodney King uh, situation in Los Angeles. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of racial tension, and that transcended with that trial as well. It was you know, and the trial itself was a fiasco, and just how crazy it was, and really opened my eyes to what, you know, well, opened the eyes to a lot of people because they thought this was a slam dunk case, and it was anything but.
It did become theater, and it became part of social culture basically in America. You had Seinfeld basically lampooning the whole jury process, or the whole judicial process, by having the lawyer on Seinfeld was Jackie Chiles, and he was supposed to be a representative of, or at least a television representative of uh, Cochran, Johnny Cochran, and he played the role to a hilt. But you had to have a show like Seinfeld, which was one of the most watched sitcoms of its day at the time, making fun of O.J. Simpson and making fun of the court process that we all saw and we all watched. It was something. It was something, and I mean that period from the beginning of June of 1994 until July of 1995, when the prosecution rested and the verdict came out. Uh, it was a crazy, crazy time. It was something that dominated headlines everywhere. It was something that it captivated, and that's probably the wrong word. It polarized North American society. It captivated North American society, and I think we're all, none of us are the richer for it at all.
Well, at the end, there's still two people dead,
Yes, exactly.
right? Like that's what got lost in all of that, I think, is that once he was acquitted, you know, the families fought for years and years for justice. They won a civil lawsuit. You know, they never saw the money that they were owed, but uh, to that extent, and that was part of the reason why OJ got thrown into jail too. It was just so bizarre. You know, we're all captivated by celebrity, or a lot of people are. Um, but that I think that it was part of why people were so upset too. It's almost like he bought his way out of it. You know, because he had the best lawyers, he had the best legal team, and you know, it just seemed like you know, there's another example of like it's almost like a class system. But yeah, very weird day today, I must say, and it's wild watching. As soon as within a half an hour reading some of the posts that I've seen, it's just where everybody sort of feels the same way. It's like, how are we supposed to feel today? Like, it's very weird.
Yeah, it certainly is. You're absolutely right. And I don't know what else to say about it, Shawnee.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't want to go on and on and on and on and dissect it, but I think we couldn't ignore it. I don't believe in canceling history. It happened. Again, like I said, there may be, you know, we talk about students and you know, at Algonquin College that might be listening to this, and you know, it's part of our broadcast history of what, you know, the type of things we had to deal with and how we had to cover it. It was a sports hero, but it was a news story, And it was like, how do you handle that? Because it was totally different for us at that time, because sports radio just started too. Like it was a very bizarre time to be part of that. Whereas today, it's I guess it's more normalized. I don't know, but at that time, that was different for everybody. You know,
Well,
you weren't just
as you
talking about
said,
local teams. It was a much bigger situation than that.
it was something that transcended sports and it transcended society at the time. It was bigger than sports. It was bigger than news. It was bigger than everything else. It was something that became everything.
Well, like I said, the two biggest things that ever happened in my career in terms of that was the OJ situation case, uh, and then 9/11. Like
Right.
where sports became news, or
Yeah.
you had to cross that line into news. And how do you cover that? And it was it was trial by fire. Literally, you were flying by the seat of your pants how to react and what does this all mean.
I can remember you telling a story about Gino Reda, and he's trying to inform people on television, on national television, of what's going on, and he doesn't have a monitor in front of him to see
Right.
anything. Everything's feeding into his ear, and he's trying to basically broadcast via IFB, which is the earpiece in his ear, through from people giving him information that way. And God help him if any of the information was wrong.
Yeah, well, that Gino, for those who might be in the US, a longtime broadcast legend at TSN here in Canada, but he was doing it by the seat of his pants as well. Like it was just so different uh, because it captivated everybody, and you know, and you hear stories. Bob Costas tells a legendary story where OJ tried to call NBC and somebody picked up, a producer or something, and they thought it was a hoax. No, it was actually OJ Simpson trying to get a hold of Bob Costas, who was at Madison Square Garden for that NBA playoff game. You know,
I think of the introduction that he gave before that game and how masterful it was in terms of the reality of the situation and the fact that while we were watching the game and while they were broadcasting the game, they were going to have to break away and go to LA at any given time. And we didn't know when it could happen. We just knew that it could happen. And the way he let us all know that, I thought was one of the best pieces of broadcasting that I can remember in my life.
and I'm sure there were a lot of fights internally about that too, because that was so different. Uh, you know, how do you prepare for that? But how awkward, because you know how many months before they were quote unquote teammates at NBC
Yeah.
doing football games. Like it's just again, it was a crazy time. It was a crazy situation, and you know OJ Simpson passing away today, and we all have our opinions about the situation. We all have our opinions about OJ Simpson. But I think on our show, the Sports Lunatic Show, it is sports and transcending sports, and I think we can't ignore it, and that's why we did this show today.
I guess that's the perfect way to end this edition of the Sports Lunatics, isn't it, Shawn?
I don't know if there's a perfect way to end this type of show, Howie, but yes, I agree with your sentiments that I think we'll wrap it up for this edition of the Sports Lunatics. We appreciate you tuning in, and please send us your thoughts on how you're feeling today, because I'm sure you're feeling the same as we are, very conflicted on so many levels. I'm Shawn Lavigne in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
And you've been watching or listening to the Sports Lunatics show. Please check us out at thesportslunatics.com, on YouTube at Sports Lunatics, and you can find us on your favorite audio platform. Have a great sports day, everybody.